Pastor, we got a lot of response mail this week. I got a lot of notes from people
Really?
from last week. Yeah, because of the coffee conversation, it's polarized.
Oh, you mean off of this?
Yeah,
Off of the
this.
off of the coffee conversation.
The coffee conversation. There were some people.
They don't like perk coffee.
They do. I think that. But there was people just feel very passionately about this.
About coffee.
Yeah, yeah. As you might imagine, there are some people that were, they.
It surprises me what people are passionate about. It really does.
Well, with the dawn of the internet now, there's a niche for everything. Like you can find the other people that are like even the most fringe things. You can find other people really passionate about it.
It was like people going to see the Rocky Horror Show at midnight,
Oh wow!
dressed up
Yeah.
like characters in the show.
Joseph is making some eyes back there. I can't.
Uh-oh.
Did that
We hit
scare
a
you, or
nerve.
were you part of that?
Yeah.
Were you part of? Okay, he was not part of. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Joseph was not, because that was the original like cult following for a movie. I feel is that where the cult thing came from?
I don't think
Cult following.
I think it was the cult thing.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Yeah, I love To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah,
I think that's just an incredible. That book, the movie. I just it's the South I grew up in. It's how I grew up. It's how we grew up. Those of us that are here from the old South. I'm not saying that it's right. It certainly wasn't right, and that's the whole purpose of the movie.
Right.
Is to see it from the perspective of how so much injustice. But I've always loved that movie.
I need to rewatch that. I don't know that I've ever watched the whole thing. I read the book, and I think it was in middle school we had to read that.
Yeah.
And that was such an education for me.
Yeah.
And they released they had the follow-up, Go Set a Watchman. Did you know about that?
No.
They released the sequel posthumously from
Oh yeah,
Harper
the
Lee.
book.
Yeah.
I started reading it, and it is. I'm sorry, it just is not that good.
Yeah, that's what my wife read it, and she said the
It's
same
just
thing
not
she
that.
said.
It's not. Her first and one and only book was really the best.
God rest her soul.
That's a
Harper
great
Lee.
movie too, Capote. With what's his name?
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah,
Oof.
Hoffman. That's a great movie to see the dynamic between
Yes.
him and her and.
I had forgotten. that was
He's
even
the
a part of
guy
it.
that came out with a historical novel. To write a novel based on history.
What,
That
In
was
Cold Blood?
Capote's.
Is that what it was
Yes,
called?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, it just fascinating.
In Cold Blood. Perfect way to start our discussion today.
Yeah.
You opened yesterday with like something that, well, I mean, it's been made into a movie a couple times. Just this idea of contacting God, in the modern world, and you talked about that artist that has the phone number for
Johann
God.
van der Daan. Yeah.
Did he do that on purpose? Like it was supposed to be like a sarcastic thing?
No, I think he did it trying to convey the idea you can call God anytime. God's always available, But like I said, sometimes Christians don't think things through, or believers don't think things through. And what do? You put a voicemail on there. This is the voice of God. I'm not able to take your call. Leave me a voice message. Well, good night. But how many times have we felt like that?
Oh, for sure. Sure.
That to me, it's humorous on the one hand, but on the other hand, I have prayed before, and I have prayed, Lord, are the heavens brass? That nothing gets any higher than the top of my head.
You feel like it's just echoing
Yeah,
back down.
and that's exactly the way I see Job in the whole book of Job, is that he keeps saying, here's how I'm feeling, this is what's going on with me. God, are you aware? Would you answer me?
Well, he even has that one passage, I remember it well, from like 4 weeks ago. And you said what was so distinctive about that is that he did not pray. He even got to a place where part of his response was not prayer.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he got tired of it.
And then he comes back. He comes back to pray. But then he comes to the place where he just stops. That's it. No more. There's nothing else to be said. The words of Job are ended. That's pretty profound right there. The words of Job are ended. Those 6 words. That would be just an interesting take right there.
Well, it is interesting. It's also, and you mentioned this in either yesterday or the week before, how, like, yes, it says that, but he does talk one more time at the end.
He does. He does. He comes back in chapter 38 when God just speaks to him out of the whirlwind, and basically what Job says is, "Oh no, oh,
What have I brought upon myself?
What can I say?" Then the Lord said to Job, "Will the fault finder contend with the Almighty?" And Job answered the Lord and said, "My bad."
The Mac Brunson translation.
That's the MBT.
I like that. Well, I guess, what's the significance then of it saying the words of Job are ended? Does that mean like his argument is over, or?
I don't know. I'll have to leave that up to the Hebrew scholar.
Okay.
To search out the.
Forgot that was me for a second.
The definite article there.
Okay, I will take a look. I will take. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed to say I'm not using my Hebrew Bible like I normally do. So that was last week, and this is when it begins, the sections 5 chapters long of Elihu responding. And I thought it was really interesting because up until this point, I mean, I feel like I've been along for the ride through most of this, and I even read Elihu's stuff ahead of time before you preached it, and it just did not, I guess I had it in my head that he was just going to be wrong about everything that he said.
No, he's young, and like youth, there is a lot of growing and maturing that needs to come, yet out of this young guy comes profound truth.
He's got the core of it.
Yes.
Like he understands.
He's got a grasp of it. Well, listen, he's human, just like we all are. Right. My flesh comes through at times. I sin. I get, nobody is more disgusted with Mac Brunson than Mac Brunson. So, I mean, we all are human, and that's Elihu. A little bit will come out, a little bit of arrogance will kind of seep out, a little bit of pride, a little bit. I said yesterday, because this is where I'm thinking, I'm preaching, biblical preaching this fall at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary Extension here at Valleydale. And, of course, when I read this, I'm thinking all of chapter 32 he's been talking is kind of introduction.
Right. But you said
if I'm
too
grading
long.
this, I'm going to say that's too much. That's too long. You got to go back. I'm going to take off points for too long of an introduction. You spent too much time doing that.
Well, I couldn't help but note that multiple times you've broken your own rule.
Oh, gosh. That's just like my preaching professor who said, don't ever use the Greek in a sermon. And what does he do on Sunday? He gets up and uses the Greek in a sermon. And you're thinking, what are you doing? You're telling me this. Oh, well, there are times when you need. Well, there are times you
can't. It's like what's the fallacy that people say? It's like never work in absolutes.
Yeah,
never speak in absolutes.
Listen,
which of course
that is more true than you realize. That is more true than you realize.
Well, I think we get it. You sort of implied that yesterday, that after you've preached for 40 years, you kind of know when you got to break some of the rules in order of communication out of the scriptures, of course.
There's some times when you have to use the word that's not a word, ain't, because it gives an emphasis.
Yeah. Well, it gets people's attention. I remember you talked about that even with Churchill, how he would like lean into his lisp, even though it was strange.
He did it. He would
practice
it. He would stand and practice and work on that lisp. He had a lisp, but he used it. Gosh, it was just brilliant. If you go back and listen to the old recordings of him, you know, he's punching it for all it's worth right here.
I still haven't done that. I need to go do that. I should have remembered.
Never has so many owed so much to so few.
That is so interesting. That is so well, and just you doing that makes me see that guy who played Churchill in that movie, The King's
Yes.
Speech.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that the movie you're thinking of too?
No, I tell you, in college, before I would take a test, I would study, and then I would go to the library and sit down in the back and put a pair of headphones on and a record,
Yes.
and I would listen to Churchill speeches. And it would just take my mind off and away
Wow.
from the biology test that I was about to take and barely pass. But it fed my soul.
I'm
Never give up.
okay. Well, that's everybody's homework is that they got to go. Actually, well, maybe we should post
You
a
can
link
get
to
them
some
on
of this.
YouTube now.
Yeah, you
See,
don't have to
that's
go
the
to the
wonderful
library.
thing of laptop.
Yeah, the internet has brought us all that for sure. Well, I guess as I usually do, I need to exhort people to go back and listen to the message. But like I said beforehand, like you've already told us that you're letting yesterday stand as your message about Elihu. So
Yeah, I'd love to preach a couple of more chapters, but I need to wrap this on up.
well, give us a little bit of what you would have said.
Well, like most sermons, into the very middle, you kind of begin to drift a tad, but then he comes back powerfully when in chapter 36 and 37. And what he's basically saying is that God is behind all of this. Job, don't worry. God is mighty. Behold, God is mighty, but he does not despise any. That's a great word right there. Chapter 36, verse 5. He is mighty in strength of understanding. Now, that's a wonderful thought, too. Have you ever thought of your understanding being strengthened? Having strength. His understanding is strength. It is strengthened. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives justice to the afflicted. He is a just God.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to tell you, you come down, chapter 37, verse 22. I want you just to let me just read these last couple of verses here. The last couple of verses of Elihu's speech. Just before God speaks, now men do not see the light which is bright in the skies, but the wind has passed and cleared them. Talking about blowing away the clouds. Out of the north comes golden splendor. Around God is awesome majesty. Now I want to tell you something. That is so beautiful. It just about brings tears to your eyes. The Almighty, we cannot find him. He's exalted in power. He will do no violence to justice and abundant righteousness. Therefore men fear him, awe him, reverence him. He does not regard any who are wise of heart. If you think you're smart, God pays you no attention. But is that not just out of the north comes golden splendor?
Well, and there he
Around
ends it.
God is awesome.
Would you grade that as a good sermon
Oh, my
conclusion?
stars. Yes. Yes.
Well,
I may have to go back and take back what I said about Eli
hey,
at the beginning.
we're at your behest.
Then God answered. God's going to speak now. Next.
Okay, well, and we don't want to spoil that because I think I'm really excited for that this week.
It will be very visual.
Yeah, that's what
For
we're
those,
working
for
towards.
those of y'all that are watching, this coming Sunday is going to be very visual.
Yeah, and yeah, we're gonna try to make it as cinematic as possible. You know, we're hoping that you'll even come and help
Cecil
us
B. DeMille.
practice it. And that's that sort of thing.
Cecil B. DeMille.
I'll get your best Gregory Peck impersonation. But I wanted to say, because just a second ago you're talking about how just the mere reading of this verse, how like there's this emotionally evocative response, and I don't believe that that's simply a sentimental response. I don't believe that that's simply like, you know, a hormonal or emotional thing. Like I really do believe it's
Lord,
spiritual.
I hope it's not harmless.
Was not implying anything by that, Pastor Mac, but the segue is you talked yesterday about how the word that Elihu is bringing, he kept talking, and your first point, it was a sub point, but it was talking about how the word is supernatural. Well, that has just been ringing in my head. I was even talking with Joanna before this about the implications of that. Can we talk about that for a second? The implications of this word being supernatural, and when we read it, that it is God speaking to us.
Well, do I have enough time to tell you a little story that will show you that?
Please, please.
1941, there was a young mother who had sent her son, her only son, off in the military at the time, signed up. He was in the Navy. He had gone to a little-known naval base called Pearl Harbor.
Little known at that time.
She was a nurse. He'd been gone for 2 years, and she had not heard from him. He just left home, and she didn't hear, and she was very concerned. She loved her son. And she, as a nurse, signed up to be a military nurse, and she wanted the assignment at Pearl Harbor. So she was sent out to Pearl Harbor to work in the hospital there. December 7th comes. All the tragedy of that day. She was assigned to helping uncover and identify bodies after that tragic, terrible day.
Oh, my goodness.
She comes to a body covered in a sheet, and she pulls the sheet back, and she looks down into the face of her own son, and she passes out. Of course, they pick her up. They take her to a room. Later that day, a chaplain comes and brings the effects of her son, all the stuff that he had that they had found on him, and one of the things happened to be a little Gideon New Testament, which is a service testament. The Gideons had been there, had passed out to all of these sailors a New Testament with the Psalms in it. And in the back, all she could see was that he had written his name on this line. It was waterlogged. Of course, he had been shot. He was down in the water, or blown up, and he was down in the water. And the Bible was in his pocket, but the water had gotten to the little New Testament. And so she called the chaplain back, and she said, "Can you get me a copy of this?" And so he said yes. He brought her back a copy of it. She turned to the back, and in the back, the Gideons in the back of that Bible have a plan of salvation that's listed out. And she saw that there on the line that says, "I have prayed to receive Christ as Lord and Savior," her son had signed his name. And that night, she gave her life to Jesus Christ. Now, let me tell you, had she had and recovered from her son's body a copy of Shakespeare's sonnets, would that have changed her life? If she had had a John Grisham novel, would it have changed her life? If she'd have had anything, if she'd have had a Truman Capote novel in cold blood, would that have changed her life? Browning, Keating, whoever.
Right.
But what changed her life was the supernatural power of the Word of God. That is what makes this unique.
So get out there and read it, you guys. Let it change you.
Thus endeth the lesson.
Well, and you guys make sure and listen to the lesson from yesterday. And yeah, Pastor, I thank you for that one. Speaking as someone who struggles with pride greatly and is less than 39 years of age. So especially all my brothers and sisters out there that are on the youthful side, make sure you listen to that message from yesterday.
But there were
about
so many good points about his life.
Oh, excellent. Excellent, yeah. I think that's everything. You got anything else?
No.
Great. Well, we're gonna see you for a really cool experience this Sunday. Obviously, still got our midweek experience this Wednesday. VBS is starting next Wednesday night. Can you believe that?
No.
And we're going to welcome some people back this Sunday. It's Promotion Sunday, and we're going to start children's ministry again.
Do you know that more people are saved during Vacation Bible School than in any other time of the year?
I really believe that. I believe that's true at our church.
Yeah.
Historically speaking. Okay, cool. Let's go to another meeting. See you guys.